and welcome to another fun-filled frolic into the world of interactive entertainment with Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I am Bajo.
And I'm Junglist. This week we'll load up our chicken gun and fire a few rubbery fowls at one or two new offerings.
Including not one, but two Battlefield games. The prettied-up, slimmed-down version of Battlefield 1942, Battlefield 1943, and the free-to-play online browser game Battlefield Heroes.
The Wii adds to its slim library of adult offerings with The Conduit.
Switching smoothly between three heroes as they battle an undead army is the key to Trine.
To coincide with the relaunch of the Monkey Island series, we'll be looking at the rich history of LucasArts Adventure games and backwards compatible.
What makes you think that the scum bar is going to be stolen?
Well, it's like this. I've been fighting off a hostile takeover bid from an Australian land developer.
Come again?
You heard me.
But before all the shenanigans begin, can you name this game? What's making headlines this week, Jung?
Good game.
Oh, he's on mute again.
The massively multiplayer space trading game EVE Online is well known for its realistic economy, but it also has its downsides, including embezzlement. According to reports from the BBC, an Australian EVE player using the internet handle of Rictic has this week been permanently ejected from the game after embezzling more than 200 million virtual game credits from a virtual bank called EVE Bank. The cybercrim then allegedly on-sold the credits for a sum of over $6,000 in real-world cash. EVE Online's developer, CCP Games, responded quickly to the virtual crime by banning the offending user, although he wasn't banned for theft, but for selling his ill-gotten gains for real money, a practice that goes against EVE Online's terms and conditions. Good Game attempted to contact both EVE Bank and Rictic for comment, but at the time of reporting they had not responded to our requests. Another high-profile game has been delayed this week with the announcement that Sega's Bayonetta has been delayed until 2010.
Next time you want your hands on me, you better make sure I'm dead.
The Witchery-themed action game was due to launch in October 2009, but Sega have decided to hold it back until next year. Sega have cited marketing reasons as the cause of the delay, and Bayonetta is now slated to avoid the overcrowded Christmas sales season. The only region that will not be affected by the delay is Japan, which will still receive the game in October 2009. Swedish gamers who wish to sell their MMO tunes will now have to pay tax on the transaction. Over the past 14 months, the Swedish tax office has been monitoring Avatar sales and have worked out that over $100 million has potentially been earned without a cent of it being declared as income. The office suggests that gamers selling or buying online characters should now send invoices and receipts to each other for taxation purposes. Good Game contacted the Australian Taxation Office to find out what the local tax laws allowed, and were informed that Australian gamers can sell their avatars and not be liable for tax as long as it's a hobby and not a business.
Good game.
Trine is a new platformer for PSN and PC where a wizard, a thief, and a warrior stumble upon an ancient object known as the Trine, which combines their souls. This gives you, the player, the ability to switch between these three heroes on the fly as you platform your way from the wilderness to the kingdom's darkest dungeon, overcoming a horde of physics-based challenges to stop the undead army from ravaging the land.
As expected, each hero has their strengths. The thief is more nimble. She can grapple onto wooden objects and fire arrows. The wizard can conjure up boxes and platforms and levitate objects, but sucks when it comes to combat. And the warrior can block most things with his shield and later on charge enemies and throw things. But tough as he is, if you let yourself get sandwiched, you're gonna get smiggity smashed. There's not much in the way of physics puzzles, it's mainly just getting through the level.
Yeah, I didn't come across any mindbenders either, and once you level up the wizard, you can have multiple boxes and platforms on screen at once, and this solves pretty much any problem that doesn't have any skeletons. But I still enjoyed my time with Trine Jung, and I think it's because of the look.
It is a pretty game. I love those boxes that the wizard conjures up. The mini boss fights are fun too, the levels are great, and again, the boss fights aren't very in-depth, it's just jump attack and then block, but because it's a giant skeleton and it looks so good, it's enjoyable.
There's also the option to play co-op, where you and a friend command two heroes on screen at the same time, supposedly handling problems in a better combined way. But in our time with the game, we found pretty much the wizard can do just about anything, so maybe this becomes more important later on in the harder levels. But co-op is always good, and you can't complain with that. Final thoughts?
Well, there's a difference between physics puzzles and just using abilities. Trine is a game where you use abilities, but despite all that, it's still pretty fun. I found myself wanting more. I'm giving it 7.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I haven't seen a secret room in a game in so long. Where have you been all this time? It could have been a lot more frustrating, but the good checkpoints made sure it wasn't. I'm giving it 7.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Good game!
Hadouken! 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 Hadouken!
Good game!
Junglist, I'd like to test your knowledge.
Okay.
What's the most popular computer game ever created?
Sims.
No, bad guess. It's Solitaire. You know, the game that shipped with every version of Windows since the 90s. In fact, it was blamed for a drop in productivity in the workplace, and it was created by Wes Cherry, a Microsoft employee who never received a single royalty cent
And
for the
the reason
game.
you're enlightening, boring us with this is?
Well, now it's been cloned, Jung, and this time, it's got fairies. Faerie Solitaire takes the solitaire mechanic and adds some role-playing elements to it. The aim is to clear the screen of cards by selecting them in ascending or descending order, and as you do this, you gain XP. There's also mini-goals for each level, such as trying to beat the level in under 5 minutes or having a perfect round.
As you play, you earn gold, which can be used to purchase abilities, such as being able to reverse your play, or being able to see the top card in your deck. You'll also uncover eggs, which hatch into pets, which evolve as you gain experience in the game. And gameplay-wise, give you a fat lot of nothing.com. This is one of those games that looks pretty and it seems like fun, but scratch the surface and you'll see it employs every trick in the book just to keep you playing.
You're on a roll, John. Please continue.
Well, it's exceptionally easy, and it's filled with lots of bleeps and bloops to let you know you're doing great. There's the Peggle-like fanfare when you win. And tones will go higher and higher as you combo cards. If you were just hearing it from the other room, you'd be forgiven for thinking it was a pokey machine. The actual game is alright, but it's a step down from real solitaire, and all the persistent reward stuff like buying buildings, evolving pets, experience bars, none of them add to the fun, they're just there to keep you playing. But these carrot-on-a-stick game mechanics are pretty easy to add to a game, so why not play one with that and fun gameplay? They're just like collectibles or achievements. And don't get me wrong, sometimes these achievements can add to the game, like in Geometry Wars 2, which had achievements like activate 8 safe zones in King mode, or trace the perimeter twice in Pacifism mode. These things were like a game within a game. But Faerie Solitaire has pets, which don't really add to the fun, they just take a long time to collect.
But you can hardly expect the Faerie Solitaire crowd to play Geometry Wars, Joe.
Yeah, but my point still stands. It's like they followed a casual game formula for all these persistent rewards to addict people to the game, so that when their friends ask them, hey, what are you playing? They go, can't stop playing Faerie Solitaire. But they forgot to actually make the game fun.
But not rating this one too highly, are you, John?
Nah, I mean, like I said, the actual gameplay is just alright, but I want to grab everyone that's playing this game and say, hey, you can find a game with fun gameplay and the persistent stuff and pets like Animal Crossing or Pokemon. I'm giving it a 5.
We've seen this blending, melding of games work before, Bejeweled to Puzzle Quest, for example, and even though I really found myself wanting to keep on playing and keep going, I resented the reason why. I'm giving it 5 out of 10 as well.
Good game! LucasArts' classic adventure series Monkey Island has had a resurgence of late, with both a new episodic game and a reimagining of the original all coming out around the same time. But LucasArts' adventure legacy isn't just about pirates and primates in the Caribbean Isles. It's also about awesome games like this. The first graphic adventure game that LucasArts ever made was called Labyrinth. Based on the 1986 Jim Henson film of the same name, Labyrinth saw you playing as the film's main character, Sarah, as she attempted to navigate a treacherous maze to rescue her baby brother, who has been kidnapped by David Bowie. Of course, Labyrinth really only paved the way for the real classics, like Maniac Mansion. Coming out in 1987, Maniac Mansion was created by game designer and programmer Ron Gilbert, and it established the style for every LucasArts Adventure game to come. It saw you controlling 3 trespassing teenagers as they infiltrated the mansion hideaway of an evil genius, Dr. Fred Edison. It was packed with absurd humor and featured some of the most ridiculous characters and situations in gaming history, including a walking, talking tentacle, and a purple space meteor with plans of world domination. Maniac Mansion also included a new point-and-click interface that featured a selection of verbs at the bottom of the screen, which you had to use to pick up items, open things, use objects, and plenty of other actions that would all help you solve the game's diabolical puzzles. After the success of Maniac Mansion, LucasArts had to make more adventure games. And when you want the very best in high adventure, there's only one man you need turn to: Indiana Jones. Closely following the plot of the 1989 film The Last Crusade, this adventure game featured everything we'd come to expect from Indiana Jones. Nazis, hidden treasures, witty quips, that epic soundtrack, and plenty of opportunities to use Indy's trademark bullwhip. Last Crusade was followed up by a sequel a few years later, Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. This time, Indy had to embark on a quest to rediscover the ancient, sunken continent of Atlantis. And once again, the only thing that stands between him and all those lovely archaeological artifacts was a lot of point-and-click puzzles, some ancient gods, and Nazis. Lots and lots of Nazis. Both indie games were instant classics, and they helped to give LucasArts Adventure games the same reputation for quality that their films had. Of course, there was one series that pushed that reputation for quality higher than any other title, a little series called Monkey Island. The secret of Monkey Island swashbuckled onto home computers in 1990, introducing us all to Guybrush Threepwood, a naive young landlubber with the dream of becoming a fierce Caribbean pirate. Of course, making that dream come true wasn't easy, especially with the ghost pirate LeChuck on your tail. The bearded blue specter wanted you to join his ghostly ranks to stop you from stealing away his unrequited love, the beautiful Governor Elaine Marley. Like a true pirate, Guybrush stole every gamer's heart and quickly became LucasArts' most treasured adventure game series. It sold by the boatload, and it was followed up by plenty of sequels as well. The point-and-click piracy of Monkey Island was, and probably still is, LucasArts' crowning achievement in video gaming. But they still had plenty of other adventures left in them.
Your name will be cursed forever!
In 1990, they released Loom, a fantasy adventure that followed the trials of Bobbin Threadbare, the last member of a guild of weavers who are trusted with the care of a magical loom. The game was unique in that you didn't solve puzzles by collecting and using items, but instead solved them by playing musical notes on your magical staff.
It's the dragon! He's after us!
In 1993 came Sam & Max Hit the Road, a thrilling detective caper that saw you controlling a gumshoe hound named Sam and his wisecracking, ultra-violent sidekick called Max.
That was needlessly cryptic.
I'd be peeing my pants if I wore any.
Together, you had to drive across the USA to many weird and wild locations on the trail of a missing Bigfoot. Then, of course, there are the games of Tim Schafer. While he's best known these days as the creator of cult hits Psychonauts and the forthcoming Brutal Legend, he once worked at LucasArts, where he made some of the best games the company has ever produced.
I'm thirsty.
I don't think you should drink that.
After helping Ron Gilbert to make the Monkey Island series, Tim Schafer moved on to his own projects, taking the creative lead on games like the time-traveling Day of the Tentacle.
This must be that Woodstock place Mom and Dad are always talking about.
The hard-riding biker game Full Throttle.
I fixed your door. It was sticky.
And the most comical look at the afterlife the gaming world has ever seen, Grim Fandango, just to name the best.
I want to go home.
You can't go home, Celso. You're dead. But you're not alone. Everybody here is just as dead as you. That's why we call it the land of the dead.
These days, LucasArts' classic era is a distant memory. The adventure genre has all but vanished, and LucasArts themselves have pretty much abandoned making anything that isn't based on Star Wars. But with the recent resurgence of the Monkey Island series, we could yet be in for an all-new era of adventure.
Battlefield 1943 is a partial remake of the original and absolutely fantastic Battlefield 1942. It's out now on PlayStation Network and Xbox Live Arcade with a PC version planned for later in the year. We reviewed it on 360.
If you missed out on 1942, you missed out on one of the greatest multiplayer experiences ever. 1943 may not have as many classes, maps, or vehicles, but in some ways it's a better game, mainly due to the Frostbite engine it's based on, which was behind Battlefield Bad Company. So, you guessed it, now you can blow up everything.
Having your cover blown away and seeing tanks mow down trees in the distance is great. And besides the obvious boost in graphics and destructibility, there's a lot of other tweaks as well. The sound has been greatly improved as your plane spirals into a nosedive. Or as bombers approach, the sirens go off. As you or your teammates spot enemies, they'll call out automatically, and that's great.
As planes and tanks go past in sometimes spectacular scenes, your controller reflects this with a very noticeable rumble. There's 3 maps which are all based on controlling flags, and the 3 classes are pretty well balanced between long, medium, and short range. Sniper's definitely the way to go if you want to camp up the kills, but Battlefield 1943 is one of those games where score doesn't really feel all that important.
Yeah, even when you're playing really badly, you just don't care because it's so much fun playing in this sandbox full of rickety planes and tanks. You can spend a whole round competing for planes or just walking from checkpoint to checkpoint only to get blown up the moment you arrive.
There's some pretty fun bombing runs that you can do. And when you're on the other end of that, it can be quite terrifying when you know they're coming for you. But if you didn't get your air combat fix in the normal maps, then why not load up Air Superiority Mode, which was a map that was unlocked worldwide after 43 million kills were registered on either platform.
You can form your own squad with friends and then join maps together, and that mostly works great. I like what they've done here, Jung. They've taken this classic game and just taken a portion of it and given it a new lease on life. I just want more. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, it was definitely a reason for me to re-enlist as well. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens too. And it would be kind of remiss for us to not talk about Battlefield Heroes, the recently released free-to-play online game, which makes use of a Team Fortress 2 inspired art style. And like 1943, it's a really basic version of Battlefield.
You won't need a good PC, but you will need the latest browser to play this game, and Heroes is very much like Combat Arms, based on microtransactions where you pay real-life money for in-game items such as masks and new outfits. Playing well also earns you Valor Points, and you can spend these on slightly better equipment.
And the key here is you can't pay real money to do well in the game. There's always a line with microtransactions, and this time EA have stayed on the right side of that line. As far as gameplay goes, it's really basic, but really hard to complain because it's free.
I was pleased to see it put me on an Australian server. If it had put me on American ones, it would have been a deal breaker for me. But I would have liked headshots to carry more damage. It only does a few points of damage, and as it is, shootouts are a bit random anyway.
Yeah, you've got your 3 classes, the soldier, gunner, and scout, and due to the random nature of shootouts, gunners usually win. But I actually felt sorry for the scout's badge. The knifing in the back is not a one-hit, one-kill, so after the first stab, you can kind of turn around and take care of business.
It's good for alt-tabbing shenanigans, but not much else, I think, Jung, and this kind of game tends to attract the worst kind of community. I gotta mention the theme song, though. I know you didn't really mind it, but it drove me crazy. I keep hearing it. Good, Game Builder speaking. Conduit is the latest Wii exclusive shooter. You know, the Wii may have outsold the PS3 and the 360 combined, but being the self-proclaimed family-friendly console doesn't do it any favours when it comes to flogging adult games such as Sega's House of the Dead Overkill or Mad World. Both decent games, both Wii exclusives, and both didn't really do too well sales-wise.
What the Wii lacks in hardware power, the Conduit aims to make up for with imaginative names.
Hello, Mr. Ford. It's time to go to work.
Who is this?
I'm Mr. Adams.
A well-funded army with government support called the Trust is using alien technology to become a little too powerful. The aliens themselves, called the Drudge, are putting portals everywhere, teleporting in, infecting our water supply, and generally getting all up in our business. You play a free agent caught between the two factions, and your only friend is the faceless terrorist Prometheus.
All your normal shooter controls are there. You control movement with the joystick, and the Wiimote is used for aiming. A quick thrust of the nunchuck will lob a grenade, and a jab with the Wiimote for melee. All your normal shooter weapons are there as well, such as shotguns and rifles, plus some pretty crazy ones, such as the one-shot stops everything super pistol, and the alien shock rifle. And considering the processing power of the Wii, it actually looks pretty good.
Yeah, and they've done a great job with how your gun pokes around cover, but a shooter on the Wii instantly has a stack of disadvantages. Not only is there a bit of lag due to using infrared, but these games turn by having your cursor close to the edge of the screen. This then becomes a trade-off between how fast you can turn and how fast you can aim.
On top of all that, if you've got an enemy on the edge of the screen and you aim at him, you'll just end up turning. And unless you're sitting upright and holding the Wiimote at the perfect angle, a melee attack will wreck your aim for 2 precious seconds.
Given turning is so slow, it's unfair the game insists on hiding enemies behind doors and ambushing you. Even the tiny act of pulling the trigger tilts the Wiimote slightly to the side, and many is the bullet that you'll fire over your enemy's right shoulder.
It's not all bad though. You can hold onto Z to lock onto enemies, and after a while you get the hang of headshots. Also, pushing up on the Wiimote does a quick 180, but to do that you have to change your grip.
Brass tacks, you'll have more fun when enemies are presented in front of you. And there is an emphasis on moving forward in the Conduit, mainly because the portals will keep spawning enemies until they're destroyed. Running over expired enemies also yields health, and all these things are there to keep you moving forward.
But as much as the Conduit urges you forward, there's lots of things to keep you stuck in the one place. There's a lot of long corridors and repeated level design, often with spawning enemies at the other end.
You need to clear out this entire nest or they'll just rebuild it. Don't let any of them escape.
Combine all that with a special gas that regenerates enemies, and you're not going to be moving forward for a while.
In these big rooms, there's a balance between taking out what's killing you and taking out what's making what's killing you. Once all that's done, there's this nifty little gadget called the All-Seeing Eye, which is the Conduit's way of keeping you in that room for longer.
It's an organic lock, like the one at the bunker. There should be matching trigger points on the walls in this room. Use the ASE to find and charge them up. Keep scanning the walls with the ASE. Look for nodes similar to the ones on the door.
Sometimes non-stop action isn't the way to go. I do like my ups and downs, but it was just a bit short for me.
Final thoughts?
Well, if all you've got is a Wii and you want to play shooters, you're much better off with something like Metroid Prime 3. I mean, they've done well here, but there's a lot of limitations. I'm giving it 7 out of 10 rubber chickens.
A redeeming feature is definitely the online, where the two factions can square off against each other, but it wasn't enough to make me overlook the AI shooting itself. Well done, champ. I'm giving it 5.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Good game.
Did you guess the game for this week?
It was Tempest X3, a slightly psychedelic shoot-'em-up that was one of the earliest games made by Conduit developers High Voltage Software.
Tempest X3 came out in 1996 for the PlayStation, and it just happened to be the third sequel in the classic Tempest series. To win, you had to fire your laser at a bunch of intergalactic baddies in an attempt to blast them off the grid to score top points.
Next week, can video games really be considered pieces of art?
If we're going to get to the centre of games as an art form, it has to be based around interactivity. because that's the unique property of games.
That's Rod Humble there, who heads up the EA Play label, which includes The Sims.
If fighting on Tokyo rooftops is your thing, we'll also be playing Ninja Blade. And we'll also be playing with our balls in Mad Balls Bobo Invasion. We're rapidly approaching our 100th episode, so of course we've got to have a montage, but we need your help in picking the best bits from the last 90 or so good games. Please visit the forums and hit us up with your suggestions.
Till next time, gamers, Junglist out.
Bajo out.
This one's for you, Barjas.